This is a real Welsh treasure. Small, but perfectly formed. Fragments of an ancient bowl, 3,000 years old. It's called the Caegwrle Bowl, named after the place it was found in Flintshire. And what makes it special, what makes it unique, is its decoration. It's a ship. If you look closely around the rim, the small gold circles are the warriors' shields. The long, thin triangles beneath, they're the oars, and the zigzags at the bottom, that's the sea. An ancient ship, and along with so many of the objects I've found in our museums, a reminder that for thousands of years, it's not just goods that have come in and out of Wales on the tide. There's also been a constant trade in beliefs and symbols, ideas that have influenced who we are and defined what we believe in. And for good measure, I also have to say we've exported a fair few ideas of our own. These objects and many others from museums all around the country help uncover the fascinating story of Wales and the history of the world. I'm in the middle of a burial mound in the middle of Anglesey. It's my Neolithic moment. We know that it's about 5,000 years old, but what the people who built it believed in, we don't know. Can't know. They were short. This is Bryn Celli Ddu, but there's more to this mound than darkness. This is a story of light. Because on the summer solstice every year for the past 5,000 years, a shaft of dawn sunlight has pierced the dark interior of this mound. But why go to all that trouble? And what do you make of this? A stone from the same mound, now at the National Museum of Wales, with, to us maybe, weird symbols carved all over it. The key thing is that whatever these people believed, it was mainstream stuff. For thousands of years, similar monuments were built and similar ideas expressed in the landscape from Portugal right up to the Hebrides. Ideas, beliefs and symbols are very ancient travellers through this landscape. From Bryn Celli Ddu on Anglesey, let's fast forward the DVD of Welsh history 3,000 years. And let me introduce Talallin Man from the slopes of Cadair Idris. A real youngster at just 2,000 years old. This is the earliest depiction of a person to be found in Wales. The first portrait of Talallin Man. I say man, but he could be a she. Presumably Celtic, but could be a god. We really don't know. We don't know what he believed in either. From his eyes, he's either had a divine revelation or a shock. A shock, most likely, because the makers of this shield decoration might well have been amongst the first ancient Brits to clap eyes on some powerful new kids on the Welsh block. The Romans. So, what did the Romans do for us, the Welsh? Well, how about that great symbol of Welshness, the red dragon? This one was used to help promote devolution. Seems to have done the trick. The red dragon, flown on every great occasion, the symbolic fire in the belly of the nation, the Ddraig Goch. But the truth is, the Welsh dragon is about as Welsh as a Vindaloo. It was brought here as a legionary standard by the Romans and probably came from the outer reaches of the empire. Or the leek, the green and white bit on the flag. You've guessed it, Roman too. And the Welsh language. Without the Romans, we'd lack many of the simple bare necessities like words for, repeat after me, a window. Welsh fenester from Latin fenestra. A glove, maneg from manica. A sausage, selsig from salsica. Not to mention a church, eglwys, ecclesia. The church of the Romans was to say the least, broad. They had a god for every purpose under heaven, plus a few backups just in case. Take this, for example. It's the base of a statue from the Roman town of Caerwent, now in Newport Museum. Now, this is my kind of monument. It celebrates the granting of tax immunity to one Marcus Nonius Romanus. Lucky man. So here he's saying thank you to his gods, to Mars, the Roman god of war, Lenus, who's the god of war on the Rhine, Oculus, again associated with Mars, but who seems unique to the tribe of the Silures, so a local British deity, and Velaunus, who's equated amongst the Gauls with the Roman god Mercury. I think it's called hedging your bets. Having many deities was commonplace, and the Romans seemed entirely happy to worship the gods of conquered peoples. But when a tribal deity or religion threatened the Roman Empire, then the Romans did what they did best, and they were merciless. This is the Saguntium sword. It's one of the most intact Roman swords ever found in the UK, and it was found just outside the fort of Saguntium in Caernarfon. It invokes the story of when the 20th Legion mustered on the banks of the Menai. Their mission? To cross over to Anglesey and wipe out the Druids. The Druids were the political and religious adhesive that bound together the tribes of Britain in their opposition to the Roman conquest. And if, say, the Church of England has Canterbury, for the Druids, their stronghold was the island of Anglesey. Of course, the Romans did cross the Menai Straits, and they did completely massacre the Druids. Talk about bad press. The Romans could write, the Druids couldn't. And if you weren't a dead Druid, you were history anyway. A very tabloid Roman version of history.
Stabat prolitere diversa acies, densa armis.
On the beach stood the adverse array, a serried mass of arms and men, with women flitting between the ranks. In the style of furies, in robes of deathly black, and with dishevelled hair, they brandished their torches. For they considered it a pious duty to slake their altars with captive blood, and to consult their deities by means of human entrails. And so it was that we were introduced in Wales to the Saturday night out. Of course, someone eventually called time. The Romans came, saw, conquered, and cleared off again. But in their wake came a new religion from the other end of the empire. And behind their symbol of a cross, the early saints came marching in. Our museums still hold some of their relics, and many of our ancient churches still bear their names: Peris, Tidno, Telo, churches to serve the spiritual need of converts who laboured night and day to be a pilgrim. What do you make of this? It's a T-shirt, obviously. A medieval T-shirt from the 1400s. Well, it's a T-shirt in the sense of been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Would have cost a bit. There was a high price for long days of fasting, paying dispensation to the priests, saying a stack of Hail Marys, no doubt. It's a pilgrimage badge. It was worn by the devout to show that they'd been to some sacred shrine or church. There were the long-haul pilgrimages to Rome or the Holy Land, but there were also the great Welsh pilgrimages to Bardsey, say, Penrhys or St. David's. The stopping-off points on a pilgrimage, like a spiritual transport cafe, were every bit as important as the destination itself. And I've arranged to visit an actual pilgrimage church in the company of historian Sarah Hughes. Small church, big museum object. Where are we?
We're at St Taylor's Church, now at St Fagans Museum, but formerly of Pontedilais.
It's a church. I mean, it's a very nice church, but is there anything special about it?
From the exterior, you might say it's unremarkable, but let's wait until we get inside.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Look at this. Are you telling me this is how they did churches in the 16th century in Wales?
Yes, when we moved the building, we were careful to rebuild it using the same Tudor techniques. and we painted replicas of the paintings we found using exactly the same pigments.
But this is, what, sort of Mediterranean?
A lot of visitors will liken it to something they've seen in Greece or in Italy or on the continent, but at this point in history, Wales was part of that shared heritage.
It's also visual. Would the priest have sort of said, instead of referring to verses, do you think he'd have said, look at the picture up there?
Certainly. People would have been aware of the Bible. Even though people were illiterate to text, they were highly visually literate, if you like. They could read these paintings far better than we can today.
What about the costumes? Are they all of an age?
Well, they're certainly not costumes from biblical times. They're contemporary costumes. And we even find in this church an original painting of God the Father dressed suspiciously like Henry the King. In fact, he's even decorated the throne with Tudor roses, perhaps to suggest to people that the king and God were somehow closely related.
But this cosy traditional relationship between the English monarch and God was soon to be strained to breaking point. A war broke out across Europe for the hearts and minds of the people. Wales became an inferno of the Reformation. Graven images of the Catholics were smashed or whitewashed. And to stop her Welsh subjects staring at walls, Elizabeth I gave them something to read, God's word in their own language. The translation of the Bible into Welsh was one of the key moments in Welsh history. It helped define who we were for centuries to come and was to prove absolutely essential in the very survival of the language. From now on, God spoke Welsh, and how we listened. We became Bible black, and anything that could be regarded as fun was deemed sinful. Dance, colour, frivolity. Hebrew place names were etched onto the austere, frillless architecture of the chapels. Bethel was now a Welsh name, as was Salem, Mount Zion, Nazareth and Bethlehem. We became a people translated. But as chapel-goers set about building a new Jerusalem in our green and pleasant land, one Welshman upped sticks and left Wales. Driven by humanitarian rather than religious conviction, his lifelong mission was to bulldoze the dark satanic mills. It's not often you come face to face with a great man of history. This cast was taken during this man's lifetime, and what an extraordinary life it was. He was a pioneer of modern socialism. He inspired the cooperative movement. His philosophy also inspired the growth of trade unions. He was, without doubt, among the greatest of Britons, a man whose ideas and principles travelled the world. And yet, we've never given him the recognition he deserves. He's one of ours, and his name was Robert Owen. Born in 1771 here in Broad Street, Newtown, he left home as a youngster and became apprenticed, first as a draper. Then he moved into the cotton industry. By the time he was 21, he was managing a large cotton mill with 500 employees. Then, aged 28, he bought into the biggest venture of his life, the huge cotton mills and workers' village on the banks of the River Clyde in Scotland, New Lanark. At New Lanark, Owen set about improving working and living conditions for all. He built schools for everyone from infants to adults. He provided decent housing, free healthcare. He abolished child labour. He wanted to prove that commercial success could be achieved without exploiting the workforce. He also believed passionately that everyone in the workforce was an individual and that self-improvement was a road to happiness. Take this, for example. It looks like a Christmas decoration, but it's called the silent monitor, and there was one in every work position. The idea was that the supervisors each day would give the workers a colour. Black for bad behaviour, blue for indifferent, yellow for good, and white for excellent. I know, it sounds a bit, but apparently it caught on, and the workers loved it. And the point is that the idea was fresh then, and many of Owen's ideas are fresh today. And probably pretty popular, if you ask me. 8 hours daily labour is enough for any human being, he said. Parents shall be answerable for the conduct of their children, and so on. Owen tried unsuccessfully to establish similar communities in America and England, But if it didn't all work out, at least Robert Owen switched the lights on in the dark Satanic Mills. And because of his campaign for a better, fairer society, in 2001, New Lanark was awarded World Heritage status.
Isn't there something missing here? Grand status for the Scottish buildings. But it was this Welshman's ideas that changed the lives and welfare of people the world over. Perhaps we should do more to champion the saddler's son from Newtown, Robert Owen.
Sadly, not all the new captains of industry were as well-meaning or benevolent as Robert Owen. Across the emerging industrial world, workers began to take a stand for their rights. And Wales was at the vanguard of the new idea of workers' solidarity.
It is a trigger for world revolution. And when the red flag rises, so shall the working masses rise up. And it is said that it first flew over Wales.
The red flag had been flown on various occasions and for varying reasons since at least Roman times.
But what is true is that in Merthyr Tydfil in 1831, there was an uprising. At a time when Wales was emerging as the world's first industrial nation, between 7,000 and 10,000 people rallied underneath a red flag to protest against the oppressive practices of the new industrial magnates.
For 4 long days they held Merthyr Tydfil. It was like a red rag to a John Bull. The government panicked. They sent in 800 troops to crush the uprising. One of the protesters, Dick Penderyn, was sentenced to be hanged in Cardiff on trumped-up charges of stabbing a soldier. Dick Penderyn became the hero of, and martyr to, a new cause.
What emerged from the Merthyr Rising of 1831 was a new class of people, a working class driven by shared goals and, yes, united under a banner, this for comradeship and solidarity. And the whole thing seemed to catch on pretty well.
From exuberant red in Tiananmen Square, China, to Cardiff Market, where a poignant blue plaque marks the spot where Dick Penderyn was executed. His last words were in his mother tongue. O arglwydd dyma gamwedd. O Lord, this is an injustice. Less than 20 years later, Welsh would suffer the same injustice as his class when the language was officially condemned in a government report.
Suppression of the Welsh language. It's not easy to gauge the level of state intolerance in the 19th century. Certain myths have grown up. Excuse me. Child, yes, you in the back. What do you think you're doing? Are you ill? Then why are you clearing your throat? You're speaking Welsh. Well, not in this school. Put that Welsh knot around your neck. That's it. WN, Welsh knot. Sorry. Suppression of Welsh. The Welsh knot was not a myth.
It was a cruel irony. Thanks largely to the Sunday school movement, Wales was probably one of the most literate countries on the planet. But if the established church and state didn't tolerate your beliefs or your language, there was only one thing for it: get out. Welsh-speaking Jerusalems were built in Buenos Aires, Canada, Tennessee, and of course they still speak Welsh to this day in Patagonia, the only really successful Welsh colony. Many others left Wales on a different and very literal mission: to spread the gospel, to convert people to their own denominational brand of Christianity.
Today's reading is taken from somewhere quite unexpected. I have here in my hand nothing less than the, wait for it, the transactions of the Llanelli National Eisteddfod of 1895. Excellent bedtime reading. No, what's remarkable in here is a 200-page essay giving details of who the Welsh missionaries were in 1895 and where they were. There were dozens of them, and they were scattered all over the world.
There were Welsh missionaries in all parts of Africa. There were missions to Fiji, Madagascar, Belize, Sri Lanka, China. They were even trying to convert their Celtic cousins in Brittany. but one place crops up consistently as the Calvinistic Methodists' home from home, the Khasi Hills of northern India. Swansea writer Nigel Jenkins has made a special study of this unexpected Welsh connection.
Nigel, I'm just looking at Thomas Jones, William Lewis, James Williams, William Preece, Thomas Jones. A lot of Welsh names going to a very Indian-sounding place.
Indeed. And this particular Thomas Jones, who was born in 1810, his story is a very, very interesting one. He was the first missionary in the Khasi Hills in northeast India. He arrived there in about 1841, started the mission in the Khasi Hills, ultimately to quite powerful effect, so that today, as a result of him and only about 200 missionaries who followed him there until 1969, 300,000 people of this hill tribe, who number 1 million in total, are Calvinistic Methodists. In many ways, Thomas Jones was very much a man of the Khasi people. He's regarded as a national hero. And he wrote a few hymns in their language. I think they were the first instance of creative writing in Khasi. He translated Matthew into their language, and the missionaries went on to translate the whole Bible. They celebrated his arrival there in the 1990s with a huge gathering on the golf course at Shillong, to which 250,000 of the Khasis turned up. And you can't imagine any Welsh hero attracting 250,000 Welsh people to celebrate him or her.
And does it live on? Is there an essence of Wales still up there?
Yes, it's extraordinary. They sing all the Welsh hymns in their crowded chapels. The singing is absolutely superb, far more powerful than you hear in Wales these days. Hen Wlad Fy Nhadau is their people's anthem. They sing it in all the schools before school gets going, and they sing it, a very jaunty version, to the accompaniment of guitar in parties. And you find people eating roast lamb with mint sauce. And this still keen understanding that the Welsh made a big, big difference to the life of these people. There is this special bond. There's no denying there is this special bond between the Welsh and the Khasis.
As if to prove the point, from the BBC archive dating back to 1960, an interview with a lady from the Khasi Hills who had a clear favourite amongst the Welsh gospel pops.
Our grateful singing from your great Welsh revival hymn.
Yeah.
Dama Gariad Bel O Moroid.
Yeah. Well, will you sing it for us now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Adengit gat giduriau adengis nei balas lei.
Do, re, mi, re, do. Mean anything? Well, no, it's not bookmakers tic-tac. Armed with their Bibles and a little harmonium, the missionaries had another secret weapon of communication. Tonic so far, do, re, mi, either by hand signals or by the classic Kerwan's modulator.
So do, la, fa, mi, do.
It was a breakthrough way of communicating, and its impact was massive. At home in particular, it was responsible for a revolution in choral music, and Wales, to the outside world, became the land of song. Half a century ago, in the seaside resort of Porthcawl, a voice from another continent brought the radical and musical traditions of Wales together as one. A cathedral organ of a voice that could only belong to one man.
Say nothing, he just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along.
The African-American actor, singer and civil rights activist Paul Robeson.
I'm Dennis. What's your name?
I'm David Goliath.
He became a national hero when he took the role of David Goliath in the 1939 classic film Proud Valley.
Back to work with no repining all through the night.
But Paul Robeson claimed he got as much as he gave. It was his encounter with radical South Wales miners, he said, that convinced him that the struggle of his people, or of any people, cannot be by itself. That sense of solidarity with a different people from the other side of the Atlantic was to sustain him when, after the war, he was prevented from returning here because of his socialist sympathies.
Then, in October 1957, something extraordinary happened.
The occasion was the annual Miners' Eisteddfod, held here at the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl.
From a secret recording studio in New York, Paul Robeson broadcast a message to the assembled miners and their families.
My warmest greetings to the people of my beloved Wales, and a special hello to the miners of South Wales at this great festival. And all the best to you as we strive toward a world where we all can live abundant, peaceful, and dignified lives. Did my Lord deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel? Did my Lord deliver Daniel, and why not every man? He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, Jonah from the belly of the whale.
Nearly 60 years ago, Paul Robeson sang to Welsh miners an ocean away because they shared a belief. 60 centuries ago, it's estimated it took a small army of 200 to lift this capstone into place above the burial chamber here at Tinkinswood. And they did so because they shared the same beliefs as people who are building monuments like this all across Europe.
60 years ago, or 6,000, we always seem to have been pretty good at keeping up with the Joneses, whether it's the latest symbols, beliefs, ideas, or gizmos. And the global Joneses seem to have been pretty keen to take our lead on occasions as well.
But what if we were to select a few things for a museum of the future? Objects, symbols, ideas even that would tell people in 100 years' time what's important to us today, who we are, Welsh warts and all. What would we choose?
The internet?
A Welsh local paper, because they're dying out.
The computer, I suppose.
A rugby ball, signed by the Welsh team at the moment.
Petrol cars.
Double cheeseburger from McDonald's.
The iPod, but you know, it's just widely used now, isn't it?
Alcohol. Binge drinking.
Probably a statue with two hands shaking. Because I feel like today, especially in Cardiff, it's very multicultural, and I feel like a lot of people are coming together.
The national flag.
A mobile phone with the camera on.
Probably mobile phones, because nobody can live without them.
I wonder what the people who built this would make of it all. This is the last in the series where we've used museum objects to explore the impact we've had on world history and how we've been influenced by the rest of the world. And remember, there's always a museum somewhere near you. Thank you for your company. Thank you, the past. And just to let you know, if you want to find out more, you can still visit our website. Modern address coming up on Ancient Monument now.
That's bbc.co.uk/A History of the World.
So there's still plenty of opportunity to find more objects and fascinating stories that link Wales and the history of the world.
And Eddie Butler will be at the National Museum in Cardiff from 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday the 7th of April with some of the objects featured in this series.